Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Hello and welcome to Movies vs. Capitalism, an anti-capitalist movie podcast. I'm Rivka.
And I'm Frank. And we got to get through this A block here, people, because Rivka's got to get out of here. She's got a little baby squeezed out on all of her organs. And
I know. I was telling Frank right before, I was like, I feel like I have very little air to work with here. So let's. And also because we have a great episode for you. So our topical is really pointed and probably, if you haven't heard about it, an important thing to chat about. So we're diving right in.
So we're going to be talking about the Snow White controversy, as the English like to say.
Controversy.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, so the Disney live-action Snow White movie came out, I believe, last weekend or within the last week or so, and it has not done well at the box office. So, you know, like most things in Hollywood, when things go awry, people got to find someone to blame for that. And it seems like the person that the studio system and the Hollywood media would like to blame is the star of the movie, Rachel Zegler, who plays the titular Snow White, but not because Rachel Zegler is Latina, which she caught a lot of shit for when she was originally cast as Snow White.
Right.
Not because she's reportedly bad in the movie. I haven't seen the movie, but I'm sure she was
very
great.
Talented, incredible.
She was great in West Side Story. I'm sure she's very, very good in this. But no, it's because Rachel Zegler, about half a year ago, posted Free Palestine on Twitter. And you know what, Riv? That must be the reason why no one wants to go see this movie.
Right. And this happened back in, did you say this, 2024?
Yeah, so it looks like August 12th, 2024.
Which again, and first of all, I just want to shout out the tactic here, because what she did do was pretty, like, it sounds tactical. Essentially, she, in this X post, was thanking her supporters for driving the teaser to, it was like 120 million views in 24 hours. Posted that, and then a minute later, she added an afterthought into the same thread, and always remember Free Palestine. So, I don't know. I think that was a move. Smart move.
Definitely, that is a tactical move. She was specifically using her platform as Snow White in this moment when there was a lot of eyeballs on her communications, and used it as a moment to reiterate her solidarity with Palestine and the Palestinian people. So, like, and that is we talk about this on this podcast all the time about how big of fucking cowards most A-list celebrities, most people that work on this scale are. And it's because of stuff like this. Like, we're watching it play out in real time. Like, she had the audacity to maintain her morals and speak out against a genocide that is happening. And of course, now all of the powers that be are coalescing to now crush her and throw her under the bus.
And of course, Gal Gadot, notoriously who has been in the IDF previously, big supporter of Israel's genocide, plays the evil queen in the movie. And so, no, of course, that couldn't be the fact that people are boycotting her work has nothing to do with why the box office isn't doing well at all.
Yeah, it couldn't be that. Also,
couldn't be that, like, people are just like, I don't fuck with that.
I mean, obviously, it's not a consideration. A lot of people pointed out this. So we're pulling from this Variety piece that came out a few days ago, and a lot of people have pointed out that it is very clearly written like a hit piece against Rachel Zegler, but actually does the opposite and makes her seem very cool. In her sticking to her guns in the face of, like, this, literally the Disney Corporation, like, trying to silence her. And
brave.
Extremely brave. And, like, you know, whether she was aware or not, definitely like risks her position as an A-list star, or just like a star who works, or just someone who
not
works.
only risks her position, but like as we draw closer and closer to fascism, like becomes
Safety?
a very risks her safety.
100%. And the piece very, very much frames Gal Gadot as, as an innocent victim, a bystander to everything that's happening here. And Gal Gadot, as it turns out, was receiving death threats, and they tried to blame Zegler for that happening, as if like you're saying, truly, in this piece, it says behind the scenes death threats towards Zegler's co-star Gal Gadot, who is Israeli, spiked, and Disney had to pay for additional security for the mother of four. Very, very, very pointedly framing this as like, wow, Zegler had the audacity to say that she stood with the people of Palestine, and then poor Gal Gadot had death threats against her. It couldn't possibly be that Gal Gadot has been one of the most vocal defenders of Israel as they have committed a genocide over the last year and a half. That couldn't possibly be the reason that people are angry with Gal Gadot. No, it must be the ungrateful Rachel Zegler who opposes genocide. It's so, if you know anything about what has transpired, it is just so nakedly, it's just such naked propaganda.
And, I think people can see what it is for what it is. I mean, the reality is the majority of Americans are not down with this genocide, have the right moral compass around it, or they just don't fucking care. But nobody is down for, like, this is not something that, like, it's becoming clearer and clearer that this is a minority opinion being thrusted upon us by the minority oppressors.
Yes. And lastly, maybe just no one wanted to go see the Snow White movie, the live action Snow White movie, because they were like, it looks bad and I don't want to see it. And I don't care about Snow. Truly, like, all of these Disney live action movies have been anywhere from like mid to very bad. So I don't know, could also just be the economics of Disney just creating a product for an audience that doesn't give a shit about this product.
All of those are much more likely than one tweet that the country morally supports.
No. And because the movie hasn't done well and the economics of Disney suffer because of this, obviously that gives the Disney Corporation more incentive to find some sort of narrative, to find someone to blame, because at the end of the day, they weren't able to increase shareholder value. And Rachel Zegler was clearly the easy target of that. And you know what? And the opposite would be true. If this movie made $1 billion, no one would have given a shit. No one would have given a shit. Like, we would not be reading these hit pieces. There would not be all of this controversy surrounding Rachel Zegler's comments. Like, if the money was there, if money talks, bullshit walks. Like, for real, no one, like, Disney would be like, you say free Palestine all you want, girl. Maybe it actually helped us sell tickets. Say it more. We don't care. We don't care about anything except money. So, yeah.
There it is.
There it is. All right. Well, short and sweet. We did it. Let's get to our conversation, because this is a really wonderful one. As you know, we are soon to be joined by the one and only Marianne Williamson. But before we do, we want to remind our audience that we do not sell ads on this show. We rely on community support to keep the show going. So if you'd like to do that, you can subscribe to our Patreon.
That's right. For just $5 a month, you get access to new bonus episodes and our entire back catalog, which is really building up some cool content. Our Patreon link is in the episode description in your podcast player or at mvcpod.com. Also, make sure to rate, review, subscribe to this podcast on your podcast player so you don't miss new episodes and you help us with that algorithm.
That all-powerful algorithm. Also, a reminder that we donate our ad space. So if you are part of a leftist or progressive organization or media company, or you have a project that you're working on and you would like to run an ad with us on this show, you can email us at moviesvscapitalism@gmail.com.
All right, we're going to take a break, but we'll be right back with our discussion on Up in the Air with Marianne Williamson.
Hey everyone, we've got a great organization we want to tell you about called Theater Workers for a Ceasefire. They organize U.S.-based theater workers in solidarity with the people of Palestine. The easiest campaign to plug into is the PAC-B working group.
Rivka, what is PAC-B?
Great question, Frank. It stands for the Palestinian Campaign for the Academic and Cultural Boycott of Israel. It's basically the cultural wing of the BDS movement. Since 2004, it has organized with partners globally to end all forms of cultural and academic complicity with apartheid Israel as the most meaningful form of pressure to compel it to comply with international law.
The working group meets every other week, and the goal is to enlist theatrical organizations to take up PAC-B's guidelines for divestment from Israel's genocide and occupation. It's open to anyone who lives in the U.S. and works in theater.
Theater Workers for a Ceasefire also hosts events in New York like teach-ins and organizes contingents for marches and protests.
You can learn more, join the group, or support their work at tw4c.com. Theater Workers for Ceasefire, tw4c.com, or find them on Instagram at Theater Workers for Ceasefire.
Love you, comrades. Now back to the show.
Well, we are so happy to be joined today by Marianne Williamson. Marianne Williamson has been a grassroots activist for 35 years, starting with the founding of Project Angel Food, a nonprofit organization that has delivered more than 18 million meals to ill and dying homebound patients in the Los Angeles area since 1989. She has also worked throughout her career on poverty, anti-hunger, and racial reconciliation issues. Marianne ran for the Democratic nomination for president in 2020, bringing to the debate stage the issues of reparations and race in America, economic and environmental justice, U.S. policy in Latin America, America's high rate of chronic illness, and the fact that our healthcare system is more of a sickness care system. She ran again for the nomination in 2024. Welcome to the podcast, Marianne.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's fun to be here.
Marianne, we are very excited to chat with you about this. We've actually been trying to get this scheduled for I'd say over a year at some point. But you, as we have mentioned, have been very busy trying to change the Democratic Party from within. So this is something that Rivka and I always talk about on this podcast. What will it take? Is it even possible? You've run for president, you've run for DNC chair. Having come out the other side of those experiences, do you, at this point, feel like it is possible to change the Democratic Party from within? Or does there need to be some sort of insurgent third party? How are you feeling? Because you've been within the belly of the beast.
To me, that's a conversation that's very 6 months ago. Now that we have this authoritarian neo-fascist takeover of the United States going on, the answer to me is anything we can possibly do, all of the above, inside, outside, podcast, book, protest. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. We don't even have the luxury, in my mind, now of asking ourselves, well, should I do this as opposed to that? Do what's in front of you where you feel like you might be able to be of some help. The thing about the Democratic Party, certainly no one needs to inform me more than I have already been informed by life experience of the corruption of the political system in general. And that does include the establishment elite of the Democratic Party. Having said that, there is no other institutional platform from which we can wage an institutional opposition to what is happening in this country right now. So we are left with, you got $1 billion sitting around that maybe really quickly we could start a third party that really makes it happen. We can't deal at this moment with hypotheticals or theoreticals so much as we can deal, I believe, with what any given moment invites us to show up for in all of our own individual lives. I think that every person, and I think of this as a life principle anyway, I think just like every cell in the body is filled with a natural intelligence, you go to the bones, you go to the blood, you go to the brain, you go to the pancreas. I think each of us, that's what in the East is called your dharma. You do a podcast, you be a scientist, you run for office, and I think, as Gandhi said, when someone asked him who is the leader of the Indian independence movement, he said the small, still voice within. I think today we all have to think of ourselves as immune cells. The body has its natural intelligence. I think so does civilization, so do our own hearts and minds when we are receptive and available. So I think one of the problems with the left in general, they're always judging each other. You know, on the right, they don't stab each other in the back like we do. If somebody feels that they're supposed to work within the party, they're supposed to work within the party. If somebody feels that they're supposed to work with the Greens or with, whatever, then they're supposed to do that. So I don't think there's a big, what is the answer? There's just what any individual is called to. If anybody has a reason to throw up my hands and say, trust me, I know it can't come from there, it's actually me. So I'm hardly naive about the deep malfunctions there. And at the same time, if that's a place where, for me personally, I felt like I could serve at any given moment, like the fact that I've seen everything I've seen, is that going to stop me from trying to support those Democrats who could get those House seats in Florida? Of course not. Or the Democrat who's going to get the Wisconsin Supreme Court seat. So I just think there's so much now. We have so divided ourselves in our own thinking. Everybody's in their silo, and people, especially on the left, my silo is better than your silo. I'm over it, and I think we all need to get over it. There's some much more expansive state of possibility that I think we can dwell within right now.
I love that. I think that's such a powerful, hopeful message, and obtainable, and something that we can all kind of touch into. I mean, I myself, like, as we're speaking, I'm pregnant, and so I'm experiencing, just like I'm due in 2 months, and I'm experiencing that kind of magic of, holy shit, my body does all of this stuff without me. The internal wisdom that you're speaking of, Marianne. And I think it's true. I've been thinking a lot about that in terms of politics, just in terms of the internal wisdom that we have, particularly when we put ourselves in a place to engage online, but engage most importantly in conversation with the people around you, so that those organic sparks can occur. I find for myself to hear that small voice, like, I have to be in community. And it's hard, as you mentioned, silos, to do it when you're sort of more and more isolated. So it's a time that I hope we can have more and more community, more and more connection, more and more conversation to understand what it is, what our part is, just like you were saying.
Well, no one is privy to the miracle of natural intelligence more than a pregnant woman. And I've been saying for the last few weeks, nature is organizing the resistance. And what does that mean? It's coming from a place way beyond rational formulation. On the level of strictly traditional political strategy and rational formulation, we've already lost this thing. They have locked this up. This is, this has got to come from some more expanded perspective here. And when you see, like you said, you start with a little sperm and an egg, and then what happens after that, and cells that divide. And not only do they know, and this gets into unfettered capitalism right here. So every cell in the body, that sperm and the egg come together, and cells know, once again, natural intelligence, how to form a brain, how to form eyelids, how to form a heart. As you know, you're sitting, I'm sure, in awe of it literally every day.
Absolutely.
Now, within that system, not only does every cell know where to go, but it knows where to go in order to collaborate with other cells, so that together they form the healthy functioning of the organ and the organism of which they're part. Society is the same way. It's not just you go do this, you go do that. It's also, when you get there, you will find other people to collaborate with for a higher purpose than any of your own individual interests. Every once in a while in the human body, a cell disconnects from its sense of collaborative function, disconnects from its natural intelligence, goes off to do its own thing. And that, of course, is a malignancy. That's what cancer is. A cell that goes off to do its own thing. It attracts to itself other similarly malformed cells, which form the ultimate parasite and destroyer of the whole system. That's what's happened to the human race. We have been infected by a malignant consciousness. And that consciousness is the very thought that it's all about me. rather than I'm on this earth to collaborate others for something bigger. Unfettered capitalism is a reflection. It is an example of an economic system that reflects that malfunctional consciousness, which is it's all about me, and the destructiveness to the whole system that ultimately represents.
And we are living through, I'd say, the culmination of the worst tendencies of that system. As you mentioned, the neo-fascist movement that we are within right now. But, we could spin our wheels here, as you said, all day, but you're right, there is no one answer. It is a matter of all of us doing our parts collectively.
Well, and I think, if I may say so, there is one answer, but that answer has many different forms. The answer is standing up with full intention, availability, and readiness and receptivity to be used in the service of the immune system functioning. Yep. But where, are you being sent to, which part of the body are you being sent to heal the wound is multi-dimensional.
Well, that's actually a pretty good segue to the movie that we're going to discuss today, because this movie is about, I'd say, possibly the most alienated man on the planet. Today, we are discussing the film Up in the Air, directed by Jason Reitman, written by Jason Reitman and Sheldon Turner, based on the novel by Walter Kern. This movie stars George Clooney, Anna Kendrick, Vera Farmiga, Jason Bateman, Amy Morton, Melanie Linsky, and Danny McBride. The budget was $25 million, and it grossed $166 million worldwide. This was a pretty big hit at the time. I remember it was a little bit of a phenomenon. If you have never seen this movie, we will be spoiling it, but a little brief synopsis. This is the story of Ryan Bingham, the handsomest lonely man in America, whose job is to fly around the country firing people. But when Ryan's boss hires young upstart Natalie, who wants to automate Ryan's job, Ryan takes Natalie on the road to prove to her that his method of economically crushing people is actually more humane than hers.
All right, Marianne, before we jump into talking about the film, we like to give a little historical context, which we'll certainly, I'm sure, expand upon. As Frank mentioned, this was released in 2009 on December 23rd, roughly 1 year after the beginning of the subprime mortgage financial crisis. In January of that year, Barack Obama was sworn in as the 44th president of the United States. In February, the reality competition show RuPaul's Drag Race premieres on TV. In April, the unemployment rate hits 9% for the first time since September 1983, and it will not drop below 9% again until late 2011. In June, Michael Jackson dies at age 50. In August, Sonia Sotomayor is sworn in as the first Latina justice on the Supreme Court. In September, thousands of Americans attend the Taxpayer March on Washington, which takes place in D.C., marking one of the first major events for the Tea Party movement. And in December, James Cameron's Avatar premieres in theaters. Wow. 2009.
Just at the end there, Avatar came in, made everything all better. So, Marianne, the first question we like to start with, we ask our guest, why did you choose this movie to talk about on this podcast? Well,
I was told that you wanted me to choose a movie about the ravages of what you call late-stage capitalism. We can talk about language and we can talk about specifics within that. But for me, that was the movie that came up for me. I was seared by that movie. I felt particularly at the time, well, first of all, what it was naming, and that was the devastation done to people who had been loyal, hardworking, in many ways career-driven people, who had found some level of dignity and satisfaction in their work, theoretically, who were just told one day, you mean nothing, job elimination. If you'll remember at that time, the whole advent of the Reagan Revolution and so forth, and the cutting of taxes for the very, very rich. The idea was that if these people had more money in their pockets, then they would create jobs. This was the job creator class. And what ended up happening, of course, was that their business model, it was not nearly so much about job creation as it was about job elimination. And that's what this movie was about, the human effects of that trend, that soulless, amoral, unethical trend within the capitalist system. I've been very aware of Adam Smith, the primary architect of free market capitalism, had said that it cannot exist outside an ethical context. And even Milton Friedman, Elon Musk has discovered what he considers the glory of Milton Friedman of all people. And even Milton Friedman was not such a heartless person in that he said, of course, none of this will work without UBI. A lot of people don't realize that.
Did he really?
So he sure did. He said,
Wow.
We can't let the market just go like that without UBI. There has to be some protection. And of course, they just left that part out. They just left that part out.
Do I actually like Milton Friedman now?
No, that doesn't mean you have to like. It doesn't mean you have to agree. But I did think that was amazing when I read that. He said, if we're going to just let everything go like that and government hands up, you have to have. So I thought it was but what was for me interesting, so I remember the movie. So when you asked about it, of course, and those scenes where those people are being fired, I thought they were just so brilliant. And the acting, it was so amazing. But what was interesting for me, because I hadn't watched the movie since it came out. So I hadn't seen the movie in, 15 years. And especially now with these federal layoffs, which is that movie on steroids, 100,000 people, and the way they're being villainized, they're not just being dropped like you don't matter, they're being dropped, being told, this is the sadistic aspect of Mr. Musk. There's something cruel here. Remember, Russell Vought had said, I want the federal workforce to wake up every day feeling traumatized. Remember, Jeff Bezos said, I want my workers to feel terrorized. These people, there's something cruel to this. So we've moved from simple not caring to actual perpetration of trauma on people. But what I got this time that I had not gotten 15 years ago when I first saw the movie was the damage done, not just to the souls, to the bodies, to the pocketbooks, to the lives of the people being fired. To me, I was much more aware watching the movie this time of the damage to the souls of the perpetrators. What the whole, it was not just a subplot. It's two parallel expressions of what this means, both for the main character, Ryan, but also I felt with Ryan, and I don't know how much, maybe when you go into what happens there, but what it did to his soul, what it did to Natalie's soul, what it was doing to, what it turned people into. Yeah. What it turned people into, not only the damage to the life force of those who were victimized, but also what it did to the perpetrators, and it turned them into people who are hollowed out.
Yes. Yeah, I had a similar rewatch experience because I don't think I'd seen it since I remember seeing it, we were in college, Frank, I think, like around that time, seeing it when it came out, probably. I don't remember getting like a huge political message from it. I remember liking it, but I really didn't remember much. And so rewatching it this time was like, whoa, I didn't expect it to be so resonant. So I'm still trying to figure out what the emotional experience was, because it has a soundtrack and it has like hints at rom-com, and like that almost made it more kind of horrific. Like it felt so dissonant to, what is actually happening, and the banter and the performances are so charming and so witty, and the meet cute is so, there's just so much happening that you're kind of enjoying, and then it'll cut you in the next scene with these, people being fired, people's lives being torn to shreds. And then I also felt like just the soullessness of Ryan's experience, just you were so in the shoes of that, of like, it felt like there was no soul there, even though you have like this charming Clooney performance and the witty banter. It was like a really interesting juxtaposition that I just don't think in 2009 I was like, it hit in the same way. And now I would even be like, that's like a horror movie. I mean, it really is.
The system, the economic system that creates all that is soulless, but people are never soulless. So it's not that he was soulless. It's that system both is the product of and a creator of a system in which people are so disconnected and dissociated from their own souls. And he clearly is reaching for it in his falling for the character of Alex. And then, of course, he spends his life rejecting people, and karma's a bitch, because what he subconsciously creates is the ultimate rejection, a rejection of his own heart, because he had spent his whole life rejecting other people's. It's wow.
Yeah, Riv, I had a similar experience to you. We went to college together, so we graduated. We don't need to say when we graduated, but around that time. But we were still in college. I was not aware of how devastating the economic crisis, the financial crisis of 2008 was.
It was just starting to.
Yeah. But we were also, I was still 21, had my whole life ahead of me. I didn't have to pay rent yet, like none of those.
Well, we're very Natalie in that way.
Very, very much. Yeah. But as you mentioned, like watching it this time, what a brilliant story and screenplay, and amazing subversions of these characters that you think that these people should be. Like, I think it's a really smart choice of the movie that Ryan is not, as we're saying, this soulless, evil person who wants to terrorize or create trauma. He actually he's buying the bullshit, and he actually thinks
he's carrying them across the river of despair, as he keeps saying.
Yes, he's doing a
service. He's doing a compassionate thing.
He's bringing the human touch to something that could be very traumatic, and it's so much more interesting that he's coming from that vantage point of like, I am doing a good service, rather than just like I am an evil corporate shill. And like you're saying, Riv, with like the meet cute, it is so warm, it is so sexy, it's so fun and flirty. But they're talking about like their travel perks. They're talking about which rent-a-car company has the best, the best... the
materials of their credit cards.
Yeah, the materials of their credit cards and all of that. And it's just like when you zoom out for like a moment, you realize how not only subscribed to the system these two are, but how alienated they are separately, but are finding common ground together through their like shared alienation.
Well, to such an extent that he doesn't even know she's married. And look how disconnected she has to be. Boy, she's, talk about role reversal, a lot of the man stuff. We rarely see a female character who is that. I'm not saying they don't exist, but normally the stereotype is it would be the man, the male character who lives that kind of, I thought all of that was quite something, that she is able to just carry on two different realities, and then later it says that their love affair is to her a parenthesis. A love and passion are just a parenthesis.
Her version of Severance, before we had the actual Severance TV show, but she's totally severed those two lives, which is what so much of us relate to, not to that extreme, but that we have to do so often just to survive the system of capitalism.
Yeah, but she herself was not in that industry.
Right.
And what's interesting to me about her is that it was like when she said in the car at the end when she was in that conversation, she said, I'm an adult.
Right.
I have a family. That's my life. No, I thought the fact that the movie rarely made the easy choice, and that's what made it so interesting, the twists and the turns. And I also felt at the very end of the film, Natalie, of course, having said, I'm out, I see what I participated in, I'm going to have a life built on something more righteous, right? He, on the other hand, I thought it was interesting at the end of the movie because he said, and I was disappointed on one level that he was just going back up into the air, right? But I felt that that's really not the way life works. Once you've seen, you can't unsee. That movie is an example. These federal work, once you see, you cannot unsee. And so we don't really know at the end of the movie, even though it's sort of disappointing, man, you're just going back in. I took within myself the belief, no, in real life, he might go back in, but he's not the same person anymore.
Oh, and definitely.
And he will attract, you don't know because it's fiction, but someone like that could not just go, you can't go back and be this, after what you've seen.
I recognize that as a callback to, I think it's Natalie's character says at the beginning when he tells her about all of the miles that he's accrued, and she says, man, if I had all that, I would just go to the airport, pick a place, and just go. So it's him realizing a sort of, I wouldn't say freedom, but he is about to go live his life in a more,
in a way where he actually wants to connect with people and travel to connect with people as opposed to travel to avoid people. At least that's
But
how
wait
I
a
read
minute.
it.
Well, two things. First of all, remember the scene at the end where he did say that he wanted all those miles to give to his sister.
That's right.
And her new husband, because they couldn't afford to really travel, and he's going to give them the round trip to. So that we saw humanity and compassion. But also, maybe I missed something, because are you saying that at the end when he said, I'll be up there, that he wasn't going back in to work for Jason Bateman?
Oh, no. I read it, and maybe I'm projecting onto it.
No,
but
maybe I am.
I read it I read it as like he has this realization at the end that like this is not what he wants to be doing, and he has accumulated essentially all of this wealth in the form of these airline miles, 10 million miles, the seventh person ever to do so, and that him going back to the airport was him taking his first step.
I like that. I love that. That's much better than where I had gone. I thought, no. What do you mean he's up in the air? He's going back? Because Jason Bateman had said, okay, great. I love that interpretation.
I took it the way you took it, Marianne, so I think it's probably
maybe I'm wrong.
intentionally.
I don't think there's anything wrong or right. I think that it's left open.
Yeah, I think it's left open, which I liked, because it could have so easily made a choice to be like very clear, to go full Christmas Carol, give you, he's a hero suddenly. And I really liked that it didn't fully go there, because I also was left with the question of it could go either way. And I love what you said about once you see, you can't unsee. But I think there was a truth that I appreciated about when I did view it as, oh, he's still in. But it's going to be a slow like he cannot go back to it the same way.
But I love what Frank said, which maybe he's not going back, and the fact that it's left for all of us to, wow, isn't it funny that Frank took the more optimistic view? Wow.
I mean, just between, finding out that Natalie left the company because that one woman that they let go, committed suicide, jumped off the bridge, him giving the gift to his sister. I thought it was a direct callback to Natalie saying, like, I would just pick a place and go. And when he's looking at the departure board,
I think you're right. I love that. And also I thought his giving such a, glowing reference to her new employer was a sign, I know she's right. She's right to get out of here. That's fabulous.
Which I loved their relationship, the relationship between Natalie and Ryan, because as we pointed out, in some ways, like, he thinks he's the softer version of what she does. He's the moral version of, letting people off, and there's an art to it. And she's coming in with her technology and ruining the whole thing. And what they teach each other, like, to me, is like they just really get to see each other. It's also amazing to see an older man and a younger woman and it not be, I mean, this is pre-2018, and it not be a storyline where, like, he's just into her at all. I mean, he doesn't hit on her once. It was just, again, nice to just not have to deal with that. Like, that can exist.
I thought the two actresses were wonderful.
So good.
So good. And the movie would not have been what it was without Anna Kendrick and Vera Farmiga being so brilliant at what they did.
Yeah. And that she teaches him by the end, like you said, I think she's the one who I would say has that moral imperative by the end to be like, oh, no, fuck no, I'm out.
And also he covered for her. When they said, do you remember that? When Jason Bateman said, was anything said? And he said, no, absolutely not. He was covering for her, because the truth of the matter was the way she did it was not building the bridge beyond despair.
And what I like about that was that I kind of felt like at the end, and I wonder how you both felt, that I felt like there was, I don't know how much you can build that, but it's important how you do things, and humanity is important. But at the end of the day, when you're firing that many people, these people are like, what the fuck are you, I don't give a online here, whatever, I'm still getting fired. Like, this is still in turning my whole life
and
over.
Why they were getting fired, just the downsizing in order to make more money. And also when Jason Bateman said she just quit on the phone to a text. Gee, people have no loyalty these days. Oh my God.
Well, it did make me think about just politically how so often I think there's these ideas of, like, if we can just say things the right way with the right tone. And I think that we talk about seeing that in the DNC so often, just like, if we can just say, we have the moral superiority of, like, we'll fire people, but we'll fire them kindly. And
we'll message it better.
As
opposed to recognizing the malfunction of the system.
Right, exactly. And so when he says, I take them, we're here to make limbo easier, and I take them off, but then eventually I push them off the boat and get them off. That was the most truth. I'm like, so you're both here to push someone off a boat into the water.
Well, the twisted aspect of this, and another really smart subversion of the movie, is that Ryan is kind of correct. He's kind of correct in that his way of doing this is more humane.
Yeah, it's less likely to lead to suicide, which is why when she did it one day, the woman actually killed herself.
Yes, it's still, what they're doing is horrific. Baseline. I just want to state that. Yes, but what he is doing is the tiniest bit more personable, humane than her, we're going to be on two sides of a screen. I'm going to give you robot speech, and then someone is going to walk in and hand you a packet,
But it is interesting that her approach is what gets them to it does get her to quit. I mean, it kind of gets to the point where he could live in this kindness and they could live in that forever.
Once she heard that woman had killed herself, I think it's really worth noting the similarity to what's happening today. And it reminds me, this issue of the packet, it reminds me, have you heard Governor Youngkin from Virginia talking about these federal layoffs?
No, I have not.
Okay, well, 100,000 people so far, and they're just, they're pushing for a lot more, for 100. I mean, it's unbelievable. And here in D.C., of course, is where the government is located, and tens of thousands of those people lived here in this area. So the citizens of Virginia are deeply affected by this. I can't remember the number, but tens of thousands. So Governor Youngkin is a big, Greg Youngkin, I think is his name, I'm not sure. Governor Youngkin of Virginia is a big Trump supporter. So it's been interesting to see how he has played this, because he has said, this is not people's fault. This is not, he's trying to show compassion for the citizens. So he's not going to advocate for them really, but he says, we really have empathy and sympathy for these people. We're going to help you. And they're just, this is just how business is, as though government is a business as opposed to, right? And this is just what happens, when governments have to, business has to downsize, once again, creating this idea that all it is a business. And so he says, we're going to help people. So over the last few days, it's been clear what he means by help. It's a website, and it tells you things like how to get unemployment. They're going to have a job fair. So it's the equivalent of, here, take a packet. This will be the entrance into a better life. What was that line? Nobody's ever built a great empire that didn't stand where you are. So it's been pointed out, the callousness of what Youngkin, Glenn Youngkin, I think is his name, what he considers helping. They're going to have a job fair. They're going to help you know how to apply for unemployment.
Incredible. Well, and that level of exactly what Ryan kind of buys into, and that getting laid off can be your next path, your path to greatness. It can be this, that capitalist idea that this is just part of what happens, but let's ignore the fact that maybe there's a system in where that doesn't have to be part of it, but it's baked into this system. You'll be unemployed at some point, but it could be your step to building Amazon.
I think an element of that might not have struck you quite as much as it would strike someone like myself is the age of those people. The man who was 57, she said, something great can come from this. And he looked at her and said, I'm 57 years old, and looking at him and who he was. And he was clear, even if she wasn't, the opportunities for me from here.
And that scene, was chilling. And he just sits there. And that's the first time that she's having to fire someone also on screen, but he's in the next room.
In the next room, you're right, and he walked by her. It's just an excellent movie. Of course, probably people listening are thinking you completely spoiled it for me, but
no, we gave him a spoiler warning up top. They knew what we were doing. I want to talk a little bit about Natalie coming in with these screens, because there's also this very interesting automation angle to this movie.
That people aren't people. You don't have to actually have human contact with people. And that's so much of what's going on in the culture today. I think that the fact that especially so many young people, starting from like really the earliest phases of their lives, and I hope that you, and I'm assuming you will not allow that to happen in the life of your child, it's not really people, it's just figures on a screen.
Yeah.
And especially before your brain is completely formed. What is that part? Not the amygdala, not the corpus callosum. I can't remember the part of the brain that's not fully developed yet. And so you really don't get that these are human beings, and they're not just figures on a screen. And then you start to relate to life that way. I remember many years ago, I remember where I was in Houston, and I was at a restaurant, and sitting next to me, I was at a table, it was a round table, and there were several adults, and then there was a little baby in a high chair, and the little baby had a screen. So basically, while the adults were enjoying their meal and talking, the baby was absorbed already in her, I think it was in her tablet. And I was thinking to myself how horrifying this was, because the baby is at that age is when she should be picking up social cues. That at that age that's when her little brain would be going around recognizing people and people talking and people relating. And the fact that at that early an age, they are literally shutting her in to an electronic cocoon. And I was thinking, this is so dangerous and so bad. And then we're surprised that adults are so completely disconnected, socially inept, socially hostile. That level of disconnection from not just community, from the deepest level of the intimate bond we share with others, just from the fact that we're all human here. And obviously all hell has broken loose. It's not only that all hell will break loose from this, all hell in a very real way already has broken loose.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it is really the culmination of decades of hyper-individualism, unfettered capitalism, rampant consumerism, all of these things that feed into one another that create sort of this scenario that you found yourself in Houston, where parents are disconnected from their own child, and it's easier for them to, in a way, automate her upbringing rather than be fully present and engage with it themselves.
Absolutely.
There's also the aspect that childcare is expensive and people are worked too hard these days, and sometimes they need an easy, some sort of an easy fix for, just like shove something in front of the kid. I was a latchkey kid. I sat in front of the TV. I could not even quantify the amount of hours I sat in front of the TV, but nothing like this. And yeah, I think we got.
Well, on the flip side too, parents who, like myself, I mean, I'm kind of coming to terms with this phone addiction that you just can't escape that you have. Because I'm sure you've seen the videos of parents who your face you're not thinking about it, but goes completely numb, devoid of emotion, and your baby's looking at you and they have a different reaction to seeing the mom just kind of they actually have, it's like they're not getting that kind of animated face that they need. And so that's something I've been thinking about a lot, because it's one thing to not give a kid a phone, but I'm going to have to wean off my Well,
absolutely correct. Absolutely true. Have you seen this video? I don't know if it's TikTok or Instagram or whatever, of JD Vance saying the other day about childcare costs. Well, we just need to, think more in terms of getting grandma and grandpa to come help you. And then God. What the guy does, listen to this. So what the guy does is the next scene is him at a cemetery in his grandmother's grave.
Oh my God.
Grandma, are you in there? We really need help with childcare.
Yeah. At the grave or still at work, really, still also retirement is not what it was, Fascinating. I also want to touch on we touched on it a little, but the fetishization of the credit cards, the miles, this elite status. It seems so obvious, but it was just so clear in this film how it's all around us. But just we've talked about it before, Frank, you made such a good point of the second you get on a plane, you immediately just it's a class system is right there for you. You're
oh yeah, class manifest on a plane. Immediately
inside of it. And I just thought,
except technically, there could be somebody very, very wealthy in economy who just didn't choose to pay for that ticket. first class, and there could be somebody in first class who just has so many miles. So I never really see that first class thing as a sign of
people, but more that you're just recognizing like, oh, this is literally the material, like differences is like I'm going to be very uncomfortable physically.
The whole airline system, it just, especially today, how it's like, oh, you want a little extra leg room, pay up. You want to bring a bag, pay up. You want food, pay up. You know, it's just, they're constantly just like they're banging you as much as they can for every little bit of comfort that you could possibly want.
But Bingham's drive to just reach this elite club of these 7 people for this 10 million miles, you know, and just like the drive towards that, and then just that scene at the end when you have, it's Sam Elliott, right, is playing
I thought, well, he thought about that scene so many times in his head, and then once it happened, it like so many other goals that are based on ultimate nothingness, once it happens, you're like, is this all there is? He had already moved to a point in his consciousness where it wasn't even.
It was
much
such
of
a good depiction of like how those kind of perks and those like tiny elite system, you know, oh, I'm online before you. And that woman's like, what the fuck? You know, just those are the small ways that sort of like keep him able to stay in this job. And even for the people who are at the tech company who go and they're being treated like family, like you're being the family that he does not have and the relationships he doesn't have, this system has found a way to absolutely give this propaganda, this idea of like,
mimic
but you
a
have
family system.
Yeah, you have elite status, and you can go party stay up all night with like these people you don't know at this really bad party, but they're having a really good time.
Lame-ass party.
I thought it was one of the things in the film that I thought was well done. And of course, it was 15 years ago. I think some of the aesthetics would be different today. But one of the things where the aesthetic would be the same, and they really nailed it, was what the Marriotts and the Hiltons look like. They didn't let you ever wander away from an awareness of what that aesthetic is.
And you could get drunk and have a party for a night. And I know I have friends who have been laid off from companies like Google or, you know, places that I haven't worked, but they describe that not only when you get fired from there does it feel like, and I think one of the interviews said this, does it feel like you're losing your job, but because they're spending their entire life at this job and they've created these systems where they make you feel like you're getting this is your family, you're going apple picking with them, you're getting to eat these great lunches with them. I mean, they create this environment and then it's gone like that, and just like the heartbreak of that feeling as well of like, I was being taken care of like I was supposed to be family, and now I'm dropped.
That's part of the malfunction, that we've moved from relational to transactional.
Yeah.
These are not the intimacy of simply our shared humanity is shattered, and we're mimicking relationship. And when you mimic relationship rather than have relationship, you're in transaction. And what you were saying before, Frank, about even with our own children, and you end up later thinking we're in a transactional rather than a relational situation here, which can have devastating results in the lives of both the children and the parents. So it's an all systems breakdown. And that's why I don't see it as, for myself, like pointing to one economic system. Here, that's the smoking gun. The smoking gun is the consciousness of separation and, the consciousness ultimately that people don't matter. So that to me, that kind of unfettered capitalism is as much a symptom as it is a cause.
Yeah. And just the lack of democratic control that workers have over, you know, their jobs. The thing that is literally 1/3 of your life from your adult age. You know, we get 1/3 for sleep, 1/3 for ourselves, and then the other third, you gotta be somewhere most of the time and make someone some money.
I think it was the USAID, but I saw a couple days ago, the workers are being given 15 minutes to clear out all their stuff. You have to be there at the moment that they tell you. If they say you have between 12:15 and 12:30 and you miss that, you will not get it, and you have 15 minutes. So think about that. Any type of, I left that book on Rosie's desk. Any kind of, I want to go around and say goodbye to those people. The cruelty of it. The cruelty. And I think that there's another issue here. Anything that begins as amoral ends up having immoral consequences. So a lot of people who have supported crony capitalism, corporatism, this monopolistic behemoth would argue, we're not out to hurt anybody. we're just out to make a profit. It's not like we intend to hurt anyone. Now, take away the issue, really the larger issue we're talking about today about firing people. But even if we were talking about any other aspect of it, right? Lack of safety standards and so forth. We're not out to hurt anybody. We're just doing within the law what we're capable, what we can legally do in order to make, create stockholder value. So many times the argument is, but we're not trying to hurt anyone. But at a certain point in life, if you are not trying to help, you will end up harming. That we're having to, as a species, move beyond the myth of neutrality. That there is no ultimate neutrality. Everything is either an extension of love or a projection of fear and destructiveness. So that's, to me, it's the larger inflection point at which humanity finds itself that has to be dealt with. That we are at a point, just like when we were all kids and we were taught about evolution, if the species gets to the point where its collective behavior is malfunctional. I think that's something people are going through right now, realizing we've moved from dysfunctional to malfunctional. I think even when that movie came out, I would have said that is so dysfunctional. No, it is malfunctional. It is going to kill us all, this strain of thinking, right? Because it's not just in capitalism, it's in foreign policy, it's in everything, although we could argue that that is dominated by capitalism itself. But the point being that we will either, like every other species, we will either evolve in a new direction, or it is reasonable to assume that we no longer have anything approaching to a reasonable guarantee of survival on this planet in another 100 years. You're having a child. This takes on a whole new meaning. Because as you age, it's interesting getting older. Because you would sort of think, if you were just looking at this rationally, someone like myself could actually do the math and go, I'll probably be out before the shit really hits the fan. But it doesn't work that way as you get older. You actually get more radical in your absolute intention that the motherfuckers will not get away with this during the time, whatever time you have left. It's very interesting. And we are at that point of either allowing that mutation to occur and evolve in a new direction, or else recognizing the suicidal pattern that our species is now engaged in.
Yeah.
I think that mutation, by the way, exists. I believe that a more enlightened, spiritually enlightened, economically enlightened, politically enlightened, socially enlightened, personally enlightened. I mean, we all get that. I think that the expansive consciousness that is necessary, is the requirement for us to take an evolutionary turn, does exist. We just have to find that it has to reverberate to the point that it's a critical mass. Mm-hmm. In the life of a species, it's not like the majority changes. You need that critical mass. You need that 100th monkey. And that's, to me, the race that's on right now. And I think it's so interesting in this country, because not only do I think we have a critical mass, we have, I think, a majority of Americans. It would be my guess, based on nothing but my own heart's sensibility. I think the majority of people seeing what's going on in this country right now are saying, this is outrageous. This is not democracy. I'd rather have a democracy. This does not play with me. And on the material plane, how locked up things have become. What a moment we're living in. What a moment. And I'm sure you deal with this a lot, that this moment. Now, let me ask, and you can cut this out. Are you guys a partner? Is this your child together?
No, we can leave this in. No,
Frank's like an uncle.
I am like an uncle. We went to college together. We went to theater school together. So that's how we got into this.
But this is your first child, Rivka?
Yeah, this is my first child. And it is, everything you're saying kind of really hits, because I've questioned my own, given the face of everything the moment of time that we're in.
Yeah, what a time to be born.
I'm just like, I guess it's part of my own
journey,
and sort of impulse was that I just had this impulse to feel that it was the right time for me,
Do you know what you're having?
Yeah, I'm having a girl. Yeah. In May, 2 months.
Okay, so I have a little granddaughter and a second one that's going to be born in May, on May 1st, and the first one May 20th. What's your due date?
Oh, amazing. May 7th. Yeah,
Little
Taurus.
Taurus.
Yeah. See, so it's
They are supposedly the sweetest children, by the way.
Oh, really? That's good. I'm a Capricorn, so I'm also Earth.
Two
so
Earth signs.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I'm looking forward to it. We just got to see her on sonogram yesterday, and it does fill me with I can feel it already, back to that conversation of natural intelligence transforming my view on politics, my experience in the world.
Oh, nothing will ever be the same.
Yeah. And you hear that, but like to experience is another
You're
thing.
already in the experience. I mean, you're at 7 months. You're already at a point where my daughter, the sonograms when I was pregnant were much less detailed. I mean, my daughter, who is, she's due May 1st, the little face, we saw her little face the other day.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. So it fills me with, a hope and a fight that, like you were saying, I can feel it. It's bigger than me, that level of organization. And so to stay aware and be a part of that feels really important at this time. And I can't imagine it any other way.
I mean, we're going to need her one day,
Yeah, well, she needs us to change a lot of things before she even gets to that point.
Very, very true. Marianne, we're talking about this moment, this truly historic moment in this country where, as we've been talking about, there is so much cruelty, intentional cruelty, just being rained down by these, I think I can call them sociopaths. There's truly an antisocial thread pattern that is connecting Trump, Musk, Vance, Peter Thiel, all of these guys who just have
Curtis Yarvin.
I've been reading about that motherfucker Curtis Yarvin, and that's another podcast. But there's a truly antisocial, destructive thing inside of their mind that I think, and we have the data now that accruing, so much wealth or power for a given person starts to change your brain chemistry. You start to not be able to relate to people in the same way that you once were. And I think we are seeing that play out. And I think you're right. And I think, maybe this is more of like an accelerationist idea, which I do not subscribe to, but they are doing so much damage in such a short amount of time that I think there will be whiplash. There will be, I don't know how long, but I think that critical mass can and will and must be reached because, people are seeing this unfold. I mean, so many of those federal workers that we're talking about, like, a lot of those workers must have been Trump voters. They're not all Democrats, like people are going to feel this. And lastly, if there was one, getting a little glib, but if there was one sign that showed that we're ready for some sort of new cultural shift or enlightenment, it was the assassination of the United Healthcare CEO, allegedly by Luigi Mangione, which was the first time that we saw across the political spectrum people being like, oh, we're all angry at this system together,
Luigi a Taurus, by the way.
Pardon?
Luigi's a Taurus, by the way.
Did you see I saw a post by somebody who said, my 89-year-old grandmother just said, who I think is handsome is that murderer boy.
That murderer boy. That's such a sweet grandma thing
I
to
think
say.
that the very sobering and very significant reality is that things are going to change. They're either going to change, in the Course in Miracles, it says, it's not up to you what you learn. It's merely up to you whether you learn through joy or through pain. And I think there is a sense, the system is going to come down. It's either going to come down, and it is coming down. It is going to come down violently, or it is going to come down through profound exercise of wisdom and clarity and harmlessness and proactive cultivation of that which is good, true, and beautiful. Now, in order for us to be in a space, this has not to do only with what we do, but with who we are. The how of it, not just the doing of it, but the how of it, which is where being a mother will come in, Rivka, because, Buckminster Fuller was once asked, what's your definition of a genius? Do you know what his answer was? Somebody who had the right mother.
Oh,
My mom's going to love that.
Yeah, well,
So will my mom.
it's for you too. You're about to be a mommy yourself.
Yeah.
But my point is that if people are not allowed the changes that they know absolutely in their gut are necessary, if people are not allowed a redress of their sense of injustice, then things will occur which are ultimately the most violent things. Now, if anyone has even the most cursory knowledge of history, you know that large groups of desperate people should always be considered a national security risk, because large groups of desperate people form a petri dish out of which all manner of societal and personal dysfunction becomes almost inevitable. One of those is attraction to and ideological capture by genuinely psychotic forces. Another one is attraction to political strongmen, such as we're saying. And the other one is this lone actor, people who just take it into their own hands. And so I believe, and I assume that you believe also from the things you said at the beginning, that the entire phenomenon that we see happening now with neo-fascism and a coup and all of that happened because a great big hole made it possible. And I think healthcare is a perfect example. We're the only advanced democracy that doesn't have universal healthcare. 70 to 90 million people uninsured and underinsured, 18 million who can't afford their prescription drugs. I mean, it's so horrifying what people go through. We're the only advanced nation where people have to put a GoFundMe pages up on the internet to try to pay for life-saving drugs. It is so wrong in the richest nation of the world. And ultimately, all of that despair, plus multiplied by many other symptoms of an unjust society, have created, hey, if you're not going to create a better alternative, the kinds of things we're seeing now are what you're going to get. Absolutely. So I've been saying for a long time that it's the 11th hour. Now it's like 11:55. But I believe in miracles. I believe in radical breakthrough. I believe that when we reach a point of a certain kind of consciousness, like in that movie, once you see, you can't unsee. There are times in life where just the impact of a recognition that you did not have before can change things on such a all systems level within yourself that it changes the entire trajectory of a society.
When Ryan has his big realization, it is in the middle of his big seminar that he has been waiting for. One of the things he's been working for his whole life is to go to this seminar and peddle
double equus,
his empty backpack bullshit. Yeah, backpack theory. But he stops in the middle of his speech and runs out and then flies to Chicago to learn that, yes, karma is in fact a bitch. All right, so Marianne, at this point in the episode, we like to give each movie a few awards. There are 3 of them. You can decide on in the moment. It'll be pretty easy. So our first award is Best Politics. So this goes to the character with the best politics in the movie.
Nobody has good politics in that movie.
I was going to say, it might be
Nobody.
tough in this
The
one.
only people who has good politics is the person who wrote it. So that award would go to Walter Kern, the writer.
That's a good one. We do sometimes give it to the filmmakers.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think if anything, Natalie, maybe there's hope for there's hope for all the characters at the end, but potentially Natalie in quitting might have some kind of big shift. She's probably at the time.
Well,
I don't
that's
know.
you're saying in another 6 months, let's revisit her because maybe we'll give her an award. All she did was get a job where she's not a killer. I mean, she hadn't quite got
Exactly.
She wasn't exactly in atonement or redemption mode yet. She just got a different kind of job.
It's true. It's true. All right. So
I don't think she deserves a reward for deciding maybe it's best not to completely.
I love it. Good. We're gonna
don't raise your child that way. Don't raise your child. Well, she ran the race. No.
No award for Natalie. Okay, Walter Kern gets our best politics. So naturally, our next award is worst politics. This goes to the character with the worst politics in the movie, of which
Jason
there may
Bateman.
Oh, yeah. Definitely the Jason Bateman character.
And he was just smarmy enough. He was just smarmy enough.
I mean, his whole introduction is, they mention how they're in the middle of the financial crisis, and he says, so obviously for us, business is a booming. We love it when there's economic hardship because we get to go fire people. Yeah. Yeah, fuck that guy. Okay, Jason Bateman gets the Worst Politics Award. And our last award is Better Supporting Character. So this goes to your favorite supporting character and maybe a movie that you'd want to see starring them.
Wait a minute. In terms of best acting or best, when you say best supporting?
Just in terms of the character. If there was like some character, some thread, you were like, ooh, I'm actually more interested in them and what their story
Well,
is.
I thought both Alex and Natalie were interesting, but Alex I thought was really something. And I don't think any other actress would have, it truly made me think of Vera Farmiga as one of the great actresses.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't even realize how amazing her character was till the end when you realize who she actually is.
Yeah, how much of a wall she's put up in her own life.
But nothing, I think it's such a compliment to the movie that there are no easy answers here. I mean, the nuances are everywhere, even in that last conversation she had from him, where she said, call me if you want to see me. Meaning, if you want to continue on the ground rules that work for me, it's fascinating. Anyway, that would be for me, her. Well, who would it be for you, Rivka, the secondary character?
I'm thinking, it's a little bit of a cheat, but I did want to bring up, I thought that it was interesting the way they used, because a lot of the B-roll, not even B-roll, but a lot of the interviews that they used were real people who actually had really been laid off. And I felt, I wanted more of that. I also felt conflicted. Apparently, the way that the director had obtained that footage was he had put out an ad that it was a documentary about people who had been recently laid off. So they did not know that they were actually going to be in a feature film. It was more that it was under the premise of tell us about your experience and what had happened. I'm sure at some point they knew.
Yeah, they had to, just legally.
Later, but just the way in which that was obtained. And I felt like, the one part that didn't sit with me with the movie was that at sometimes felt a little I don't know if it fully succeeded in how it used that footage and then transitioning into the actors. And it felt I wanted either to have the opportunity to see more of that, have more of those stories, have it ingrained more. So for me, I'm going to say I would like to see that full documentary from that footage or something. I just thought those
I don't know if my heart
stories
could take it.
Yeah.
I certainly saw enough to be woken up by that movie. When that movie came out, it shocked me into something which now I'm already deeply aware of, but which at that time was one of the first, certainly the first dramatic representation of what was happening. I remember it struck me deeply. That's why when they asked me to choose a movie for this podcast, I said, Up in the Air, because to me, that's always been
and that's so powerful that, that's the power of a film like that to send, so like you were talking about the little moments and the ways in which we can help. And it's why we continue to think talking about movies in this way is important, because it might transform the way someone has seen a film or a film that's been part of their life forever and they're seeing it differently, or just the power of it at all to just transform someone's political journey, their activism journey. What about you, Frank? What's your better?
Mine, I'm going with Sam Elliott's character, the chief captain or whatever his title is.
Yeah.
I want
Morton
a movie.
Finch or whatever.
Yeah. I want the 7 short films of all of these people who have accrued 10 million miles from his vantage point. Who are these people? How have they traveled this much? Why are they this removed from their actual lives? I just want to see. And how does his interaction with these 7 people change him? Are they all these alienated, lonely people like Ryan?
Not necessarily. They're just
not necessarily,
traveling salesmen. I mean, world travelers.
But 10 million miles, that's
I got a million on
lifestyle.
Delta. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I got a million, and they made a big deal, and Miss Williamson, and she got 1 million miles, and, and a bottle of champagne, and then I'm thinking, I don't even get an upgrade, though. I mean, it's just but it's what you said. Let's pretend like it's a big deal. But do I get something from this? Yeah, you got champagne.
The pilot, that's really, and Sam Elliott
that
has to
play
play
it. 10 million miles.
Yeah, that's 10 million.
I wonder if that's even a thing, actually. We don't even know that that's a thing that was in the movie, but
that the pilot comes out. Not these days. I mean, we didn't even get into the whole That would extend us way too long if we'd even gotten to the whole airplane.
Oh, and that's another thing. That's another thing that was in the movie that we didn't touch on. He's so loyal to the car company. He's so loyal to an airline.
Oh, yes. I had that written down. Like the corporate perks for the loyal customer. He has that line at the beginning where he says, the systemized friendly touches that keep my world in orbit. Like he is completely grounded by his experience as a consumer through these corporations. It almost, I was like, oh, we're getting into some like neo-feudal territory here where, people are just going to be citizens of a given corporation.
And that's where you give your loyalty as opposed to other people. When Natalie shows us on a text that her boyfriend said, I think we should see other people. And then later, Jason Reitman shows the text where she quit. He said, can you believe someone's so disloyal? That's the epitome of we're all going to be so transactional that we don't even break up with you. Not just that we fire people or by, electronically, but we even break up with, romantic partners.
Yeah. And they didn't even have iPhones in this movie. So, Marianne, before we wrap up, we like to discuss with our guests how you, in your daily life, and we've touched on this, but is there something specific that you're doing perhaps right now where you're practicing your values in your daily life? And this could be obviously in your political life, but it could also be in your own everyday life practice.
Yeah, I'm on this podcast. I just take whatever opportunity I have to have the conversation. I mean, obviously I ran for president twice on this message of a rigged, unjust economic system, sociopathic economic system, as I often called it, and the damage it's doing to people's lives. And that is obviously no less significant today. And particularly watching these layoffs and this terrible damage and traumatizing being done to the federal workforce. So yes, I'm writing about it and speaking about it as much as I can.
I think that's super, super important for all of us, for every single one of us, to have those difficult conversations.
Just don't shut up. Don't shut up. Because that's what they're counting on, is it will become too mentally exhausting. It will become too, and that's what makes people ultimately acquiesce. The way they're just coming at us, this blitzkrieg, this assault on our nervous system. Now, one thing I want to say to you, though, Rivka, one of the things I used to say, I was always saying to audiences, particularly to women, I would say, often talking about how political activism needs to become simply a layer of a well-lived, meaningful life, and that we all have to participate. And then I would always turn around and say, unless you're the mother of a child under 5, we'll hold a space for you, because you're already you're in the trenches. You're doing the biggest work no matter what. So I do think that that's a very holy place. Anything we have with those children under 5. I think that you need not feel, if somebody says, hey, Rivka, we're going to whatever it is, don't feel guilty about saying I'm going to sit this one out if your baby needs you there.
Thank you for that. But I think it goes back to what you said about that. To me, that's like the opportunity that's there that I have to give myself into. And I love what you said about like, say yes to the opportunity. We all have them there. And I certainly have felt those moments of freeze because it just feels like so much.
Pregnancy is like, especially in 7 months, there's no backing out now.
Yeah. But you can't. You kind of have to give in. And so I think for all of us, that's a great answer. It's just say yes and don't shut up.
Just say yes and don't shut up.
Yeah. I think that this is what right now, the question at this moment is every bit as much who do I have to be as it is what do I have to do. We have to work on the vertical as much as on the horizontal planes right now, and cultivating our own availability, our own receptivity, and the care of our own nervous system, because this is an assault on our nervous system. And that's what the game is, to just get us to ultimately just give in. Well, I can't be there for this every moment of every day. Well, turn yourself into someone who can. or else we're going to lose the most precious thing we can possibly imagine.
Marianne, thank you so much for your time. We both really appreciate it. It was lovely meeting you. And thanks for chatting about this horrific movie.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Here's to George Clooney.
Here's to George Clooney.
Yeah. God bless you guys. Wonderful meeting both of you. And good luck with that beautiful being inside you.
Thank you, Marianne. It was such a pleasure to meet you.
To get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby.
Thank you all so much for listening. Make sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok and now YouTube as well. And if you want to support the show and get access to our Patreon episodes, the link is in the episode description in your podcast player or at mvcpod.com.
Also, a reminder that we donate our ad space. So if you're part of a leftist or progressive organization and you would like to run an ad on this program, please email us at moviesvscapitalism@gmail.com.
For next week, we will be watching the 1998 Disney Pixar film and closing out our Bug trilogy with A Bug's Life.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.